Good morning, everyone who joins in. Thank you for taking the time off, your precious time to join us this morning, Thursday morning, and it's already the end of the month very soon. So thank you,
Your co-host.
Ho, Chia, and also Loy.
Yeah, and good morning, Yusrina, Wai Ho.
This morning, once again, we will talk about what to expect in October based on our observation on Chinese astrology sign the energy pattern of the world globally that is impacted by the universe pattern, and also correlated with the trend research done by BC to help us to forecast what is coming. Will the economy recover? Will the economy be worse? So that at least you have some knowledge and also helps you to make a better investment decisions. Once you have all this knowledge, it's like a tools. You have extra tools that will also, helps you to navigate this time. Is it going to be challenging, or are we on the road of recovery? The title here, stagflation, is kicking in October. Roughly, you all know what to expect. Once again, I will start with the introduction, which I have done, which I did it just now. Okay. So introduction, and then we will do a brief recap of last month's prediction. And this month, the influence of 5-element energy, it should be in October. Sorry, my mistake here. So, and also the geopolitical and financial situation by BC for the month of October. And then we will summarize everything at the end of this talk. Okay. If there's any questions, there will also be a questions and answer session for you all, for those that join in. Once again, I will start with the disclaimer. So the content is purely based on our study in the global trend related to the 5 elements energy that will impact the world's economy, and for you to use it as a guideline for your investment decision, whether you want to go all out for it or you want to hold back based on this information. And you will need to exercise caution in investment, especially in such volatile situation. And the best is to do research on what you want to invest, okay? And there will not be any stocks advice or any specifically which company to invest. We will not give that because we are not financial advisor. However, BC might give you some outlooks on which sector potentially will grow in the next few years, which you can take it and also, you can use it as a guide for you to do your investment. Let's look at the month pillar of September, which is which was earth and metal. Okay. And at that time, we have a hexagram. I talk about continuation of inflation. That means the inflation will get worse as the month progresses. We can see that the inflation does not get better, right? So, and also there will also be a climate change with temperature rising. In fact, not only temperature rising, there are floods everywhere. That means the climate is changing all the way, not only, to the heat wave in Europe, in the European regions, but also flooding in some parts of Southeast Asia. And also there are, I think, volcano eruption as well. And important traveling does happen because this hexagram for last month was traveling hexagram. So important traveling happens. So what are those? Let us look at it. the traveling that happens is that I think earlier on we says that the Xi Jinping, the president of China, will go to Saudi Arabia, right? But he did not.
Yes.
Yeah, in fact, he went to Uzbekistan, right?
Yeah. He went to Kazakhstan first.
Kazakhstan.
Yeah.
One of the city called Samarkand for SCO summit, and he meet up with Putin, both world leaders. So it will be interesting to know that what is behind the closed door there. I'm sure there's something brewing between both of them, but it's not in the news. Once it's in the news, it's no more confidential. When both big leaders meet, I'm sure there's something that has been discussed behind door. Or else they will not meet for nothing.
Incidentally, when Xi Jinping went back to China for quarantine, there's a lot of news here that say that he's under house arrest lah. There's a military coup in China lah. So it was it actually started from someone in the US, and I think it could be that person called Jennifer Jane, which is actually a journalist for the far-right newspaper in the US called the Epoch Times. And Epoch Times is actually financed by the Falun Gong sect, and the Falun Gong sect is also being so-called funded by the US political
US military
neocons. Okay. So then it was picked up by the Indian news, and then all over the YouTube from the Indian news channel, you see a lot of people talking about it. But yesterday he emerged, okay, visiting another thing, and a lot of people fail to see that if, let's say, his position is not guaranteed, he wouldn't go to the SCO meeting, because next week is the start of the National People's Congress. So there's no way that he will travel unless his position is assured. So there were just a lot of rumors and such to destabilize, create problems and all those. So it's always all these kind of things, just as they say that Putin is dying from cancer, Putin has had a heart attack, all this kind of thing. Yeah. Okay. Oh, okay, continue, Evelyn.
Yeah, okay. So because the travel hexagram is very important, and this visit is very important since this is the first visit by the Chinese leader out of China ever since COVID started. So he chooses this country and to meet Putin. That means it is an important meeting. It could be a turning point. Who knows, right? And another interesting is that when I received the news of Xi Jinping got address, I know how to forecast. So I put in a forecast chart. It found that it is not real. Let's go through the future now. Okay, after recapping the month September's, what happens? Is it correlate with the energy that we have seen? So right now we are still in year pillar of raining, means that it's water tiger. Everyone knows that it's a tiger year, right? So but the element that is in the tiger year is actually water. So that's why it's called water year in year 2022. And 2023 will be a rabbit year, but it was only start transition on February 4th. The actual rabbit will come in only on February 4th. And this one is the month pillar here with metal, and also the earth. Is a dog month, okay? Because Chinese also divide not only year in 12 animal signs, and the 12 animal signs is just a symbol. Behind the 12 animal signs is actually the element that is more important, the 5 elements that is more important, which is wood, either wood, fire, earth, metal, or water. What is here that is colder inside is more important. And here the tiger is actually inside is a wood. So we can see that the year is countering the month here, and the water is still being counted ever since the monkey month, where we have the earth. So once it's been counted, it's not so easily to come out. That means that water means that financial, for in this year, it means financial, it represents financial. So financial will still continue to be a challenge. And it could also, and also the month will set a season into the winter, because whenever the dog month comes, that means it's a transition point to a water season, which is a winter season, and it's expected to have severe winter. The month hexagram here is stagflation, means that the heaven and earth is not united. You can see all the three broken lines here. This is earth here, three broken lines, which is pure earth, and then three straight line, which is not broken. This is heaven in the context of the hexagram, the I Ching hexagram, the changes. So potentially that the heaven and earth is not united. There will be more wars coming, unrest coming, and it's like a big mountain. Everything stands still, confusion and disorder, and also it comes to a stagnation. That means it could be the set or the starting point of stagflation from inflation, which is actually more dangerous compared to inflation. Okay, so I think over to PC.
Yeah, I think I think just to go back a bit on what you said just now about a harsh winter. In fact, the meteorologists are already predicting that this year winter will be pretty harsh. In fact, just this morning, news out of US warned that households' heating bills could be charged 17% higher. So that means that they are also expecting a very cold winter, and it really does not bode well for a lot of citizens, especially those in the in Europe and in US, because in US right now there is already mortgage, the 30-year mortgage have gone up to 7%, and the last time there was a peak of 6.21%. We had the global financial crisis arising from the US housing crisis. So really past that point. And on top of that, household debt has already reached record level, while their savings rate have gone down to the lows of more than a decade ago. So that means that the US household have now increased electricity bill, higher borrowing costs as for credit card, personal loans, as well as higher mortgage to pay on top of the cost of necessities, food and such. Because food is projected by the UN that there'll be a shortage in Q3, leading to Q4, and it's going to cause major upheavals in a lot of governments, and already in the emerging economies, be it in Egypt, African countries, and all those. You can see people are right now protesting. Okay, so I go back to sharing my slide.
Yeah, to talk about winter, because I also predict it based on the next few months element. They are all cold elements. There's no, there's no fire element inside. This is how I predicted that, because water and metal are cold elements. So this is how I predicted there will be a severe winter.
Now, let's go back a bit of a recap. Now, in September, I mentioned that Liz Truss will be a PM, and she's confirmed as a PM. And I did mention that a lot of political analysts from Europe were predicting that the Five Star Party will win, which is a right-wing party, but it was won by another right-wing party, which was the Meloni brothers of Italy. So a 50-50 hit. And what that I didn't touch on was in Sweden, another right wing won the national elections. Now these wins will strain the relations among the countries in the EU. This is because the Meloni's brothers is also is pro-Russia, just like Hungary is also pro-Russia. So I think, you know, Italy may want to launch a very will launch some opposition to the EU's policies, and this would actually destabilize the EU because right now you have Hungary, you also have Italy, which is the third largest economy in Europe, which is leaning towards Russia. And there are reports that German opposition parties have been flying to Moscow to obviously to discuss about the energy, the flow of gas and all those. But I think all this is is really gone already, because just yesterday the Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 were sabotaged. Of course, a lot of fingers were pointing to the US, because geopolitical analysts were saying that which country stands to benefit most by just identifying that. Because the Russia have really no reason to sabotage the pipeline. They can just turn off the tap and that's it. There will be no gas. But to sabotage the pipelines means that it will take many, many years before they are finally repaired or replaced. And that means that the country which can support the EU would be none other than the US by selling expensive gas to the the gas to the Europe at a much higher price. Now, some people will say, is LNG more expensive than is it more expensive than more expensive than the normal natural gas? Well, it is. In fact, it's many times more, because from the US, natural gas need to be degasified in a special process, and then they need to be transferred by LNG ships, which is very, very expensive, and then they need to reach to a port where the gas need to be regasified. Okay, at first it has to be degasified, and LNG need to regasify before it's being transported to the power stations, and that is why some people say that the cost can be multiples higher than natural gas. Now, the other thing that that a lot of political analysts were hyping for the month in August was that Xi's visit to Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia has already invited Xi to visit the country, and they have already announced the kind of reception and all those, but he actually visited Kazakhstan instead. Now, one of the key things is that Kazakhstan has plenty of oil and gas and uranium, and in fact, Kazakhstan is the world's largest producer of uranium at more than 40%. And this could mean that China sees importance in securing resources from neighboring countries. Now, this of course sparked my reasoning that China wants to secure a lot of resources in the neighboring countries in advance, because even if it takes the oil from Saudi Arabia, it has to pass through the Indian Ocean, through the Malacca Straits before it reaches China. And in the event of any conflict, potential conflict with the US, it could mean certain choke points like the Straits of Malacca, okay, or being harassed by the US Navy in the Indian Ocean before the oil can reach China. So that's why I think China is worried about that, and that's why they want to secure the energy from Kazakhstan, from Russia, as more important than seeing the supply coming from Saudi Arabia. So that is why I think there will be more pipelines being built transiting throughout the Central Asia, just as the oil and gas from Central Asia and from Russia will move into China, and Iran's pipelines could actually move to India and then to other parts of Central Asia as well. So these are part of a wider BRI project that actually concentrate the development of the economy within the Central Asia landmass. And according to a geopolitical analyst from the US, I think about more than a century ago, he highlighted that the greatest place to control, the most important place to control would be actually the European and Asia landmass. The rest of the other continents are just islands around it. And if they can actually control that part, then you would have access to unlimited human resource as well as natural resource. So that is why you see that the US has been very active in Afghanistan previously. Then now that they have tried regime change in Belarus, they have also tried regime change in Kazakhstan early this year, but were beaten off by the government forces in combination with Russian forces. And right now they are already starting another incident in Armenia and Azerbaijan. Yeah. So these are the works to actually destabilize the region so that the economy in that region will be jeopardized. So the other thing is that the EU is desperate to secure energy deal as winter draws near, and right now the price of firewood just skyrocketed. Okay, power rationing is being planned, and Queen Elizabeth's death helped to postpone nationwide strikes in the UK, which was expected to start in September and in October, but because of her death, as a mark of respect, the unions actually withdrew their demonstration. But we still see massive demonstration in the Czech Republic. Now, Kosovo-Serbia tension rose and war broke out between Armenia and Azerbaijan, and Russia launched referenda in provinces that it holds. And right now, most of the 4 provinces in Ukraine have voted to join the Russian Federation. Now, this has wide implications because if they join the Russian Federation, it means that any war or any attack launched against these 4 provinces will be seen as an attack on the entire Russian Federation. And therefore, Russia warned that it reserved the right to retaliate any means necessary, okay, to protect its federation. So that actually means tension will continue to rise. And I believe that we will soon see a winter war in Ukraine. So let's look at the economic implications of what could happen in the US in October. Now, the Atlanta Fed GDP now forecasts US Q3 GDP to gain 0.3% from 2.6% at the start of September. So you can see how rapidly the GDP has declined in terms of the forecast. And I think Q3 would likely be in negative territory. Therefore, US would have experienced 3 quarters of recession. But I wouldn't be surprised if somehow the figures is being manipulated to reflect maybe a very small positive growth, just to show to everyone, hey, you know, that the negative trend is being broken. But it will be a tough challenge because most US economic indicators are pointing towards the south.
Sustaining it will be a problem, right?
Yeah. So the recession, you know, one thing that we need to be aware is that the people from the Federal Reserve have never been very honest. Okay, from Ben Bernanke, when in 2007, when they say that the housing crisis is contained, okay, to the time where Yellen said that never in her lifetime will she see another crisis, and to Powell, who says that inflation is transitory. And right now, Yellen says that this is an US economy in transition, not a recession. So I think it will be proven wrong again. Okay. And the other thing is that housing data continues to worsen and inflation remains high. Q3 GDP will likely be in negative territory. And the other thing is that all this greatly underscore that the US economy slowdown will deteriorate into a full-blown recession and inflation will remain elevated, because the one thing that we need to know that inflation is not the result of rising prices. For those who have been following my webinars, since a few years back, I've always stated that the expansion of money supply is inflation, and the price is a reflection of that expansion of monetary supply. And US monetary supply has not even, been brought down to a level that is reflective, okay, of the period before the global financial crisis. Now, just as a comparison, okay, before the global financial crisis, total Federal Reserve assets were valued at 860 billion, if I'm not wrong. Right now, they are 8.8 trillion. So, which means the money supply has been expanded 10 times. Okay, but the recent Federal Reserve QT, by the end of September, it is expected that QT, based on the Fed's own trajectory, would reach 237 billion, which means that they would have removed 237 billion from the federal assets. But to date, the QT is less than 100 billion, which means there's a tremendous shortfall from their own projection. Why is that? Because there is already signal of liquidity crisis in the US. That's why they cannot pull so much liquidity out. So that's why if there's problem in the liquidity, there's going to be problem in the economy. And hiking further into a recession will result in the US going into a depression. That's why I doubt that the US will allow a depression to occur, and they will actually be very worried if, let's say, Q3 is a negative figure and Q4 things started to become worse. And they will not allow the US to go into a depression, because the last depression saw unemployment rising to 25%. That was during the Great Depression. So a lot of things are going on in these few months. And if, let's say, you are a punter in the stock market, I think it's worthwhile to, take a look at things before investing, because we have reached a period where everything can happen very fast in days. Okay, and of course, I think right now in the US, as I mentioned just now, there are possibility that heating costs would rise 17%. Now, another data that came out recently is that 1 in 6 American households are behind in their electricity bill. And a severe winter could cause many of these households into the cold winter if their electricity is cut. So not only, 1 in 6 Americans are behind, but right now there is going to be another further increase of heating costs by 17%. How many households can then survive? Okay, right now I think the American household have to determine whether they need to keep warm, put food on the table, or how to sustain their housing loans, okay, or mortgages. So let's look at the implications.
It's not a very good scenario, because the housing loan also, the interest rate will hike up,
yes,
will go up as well.
Yes, and not only that, with 7%, I saw a report just yesterday that at 7%, the household would have paid 50% more in monthly payment, more than what the household did just before the housing crisis. So which means they are already paying 50% more, and that why? Because house prices have actually gained 40% since the global financial crisis. And on top of that, with higher mortgage, that's why they are right now ending with paying 50% more than the monthly average payment prior to the housing crisis in 2007. Yeah, so China economic indicators were a mixed bag, but a slowdown seems imminent, and that's reason why I think China will not stimulate the economy to the extent that I believe that the government will not go the extra mile to stimulate its entire economy given the current inflationary environment. And that's why China's inflation remained low at just 2.5% year on year. And just last week, the Chinese government announced that they will actually cut the retail price of gasoline or petrol, okay, in petrol and diesel in China. So the Chinese government is trying to put inflation at a lower scale, because if they start to stimulate the entire economy, what will happen already in an inflationary environment? If they stimulate more, giving more access to credit and such, then the people will actually spend more. The more they spend, the more the inflation would run higher. So that's why by creating this kind of environment, I think it's almost on purpose, okay, that they want to slow their entire thing down, because they do not want to see inflation. And one of the things is that the Chinese behavior and reaction to economic problems is that they will wind up saving more, okay? And when this happens, when they save more, then actually the internal financial structure of the banks become more resilient. And if, let's say, it encourages people to spend more, then the debt will actually increase. And that's why China is not building out the real estate or the property market, okay, because it wants to stop speculation. But the stimulus, there are some stimulus that is designed to target specific industries, such as technology and infrastructure, because technology will actually help improve the processes. Technology would help to improve the living standards of the people. Technology will also help improve the productive cycle of other industries, such as application of technology in manufacturing, application of technology in agriculture and such. So that is why all this would actually help China to achieve its rapid industrialization via technology. And of course, infrastructure will benefit the people. Yeah, Evelyn?
Yeah, because China actually, they already started the China Technology Ecosystem. We call that CTE about 5 years ago. I think they already foresee the long-term benefits of the technology at that point of the time already. Because when China started industrialization, it was like low labor-intensive kind of industries. Those that, manually you do the back-end assembly before you reach to the consumer market. That means you're in the lower down, the lowest in the supply chain, where you are very near to the consumer market. Now they are trying to move up to the supply chain, where things like, manufacturing high-end products, where it's more advanced in technology, and you do not depend so much on labor anymore. It's more on machineries and equipment that is doing the processing. I can see those growth in the past, from about 20 years till now, it's totally different.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is that they are not only looking at technology as per certain sectors within a technology sphere, but I think they are looking at developing the entire value chain, because the curbs of allocation, the curbs of export to China in terms of American technology, even to such an extent of of the EUV that is needed to produce high-end semiconductor. All this is being curbed, and that's why China sees that the need to actually increase its R&D and also have a full integration of the entire value chain. Now, if that happens, actually the US is unwise to do so because they want to contain China. And it has been seen that the more you contain China, the more rapid China would move towards the deployment of their systems, okay, beating the US in many fields. Okay, for example, in the 1990s, the US actually controlled the entire GPS. And in one incident, they actually caused a Chinese ship to stray, and that gave them the right to board and inspect the ship. And that was because they switched off the GPS access to the ship. So that launched China's ambition to create its own Beidou system. And of course, in 2010, they were barred from participating in the worldwide space program. And now 10 years later, we have the Chinese building their own space station. Now, the same thing is going to happen in semiconductor as well. And even in the EUVs or the DUVs, ASML knows the problem because China semiconductor, has I think they consume out of the total global supply. China is the largest consumer, and if let's say ASML is being paced out of the market, it is to their own detriment. Okay, and right now, Nikon and Canon have expressed interest to supply to China, and that's why ASML in worrying that they will lose the entire China market, have increased the number of R&D personnel in ASML China to 1,500 people. So that's why, rather than losing the entire business, they are now going to build an in-house technology, okay, so that they'll be free from the shackles of the American government demands. So that is why I think, eventually they will develop their entire value chain where semiconductor is concerned. And I think that the Chinese government will also look at strengthening its internal structure to prepare itself against the challenges in the future, especially pertaining to the economic and geopolitical tension with the US and its allies. Now, the US is encouraging NATO right now to patrol the South China Sea. We have seen ships from Canada, France, Germany wanted to enter the waters, doing sail pass in the Taiwan Straits and all those. But all this is actually, like I say earlier, is to incite China to retaliate. But China will not retaliate because I think they feel that they are not ready, and they want to be financially and economically secure. And that was why I think Xi's trip to Kazakhstan to secure the energy resources, okay, to power China rapid industrialization. So what are the implications in Europe? Now, a severe winter in Europe will cause its energy costs to skyrocket. Inflation will run rampage, resulting in further destruction of its economy. Euro and British pound will see further devaluation. So, in fact, Volkswagen has already stated its intention to move out of Germany and start its plant in the US. BASF, a very huge petrochemical company in Germany, is building a $10 billion plant in China. So you can see that Germany is being destroyed. Now, one of the earliest NATO secretary, when the NATO was launched, he sort of commented, I can't recall who's that person is, but I saw the quote. The objective of the NATO in Europe is to keep the US in, the Russian out, and Germany down. Okay, that was what it was meant to be. And for those who have read my post way back in March, I think I wrote, was the Ukraine wars being instigated to destroy Russia or to destroy Europe eventually. And looks like, destroying Russia has failed, but right now it has actually destroyed the Eurozone, okay, because Germany is the powerhouse of the entire EU economy. And if let's say Germany has rapid deindustrialization, then, the entire Europe will suffer financially. So this is because of such a high energy cost, and Europe businesses can no longer continue to function under such a circumstance. And one of the key things, in terms of manufacturing is raw materials. A lot of the smelters and petrochemical companies in Europe are actually suspending or shuttering their business because of the high energy cost. All these processes in smelting, in petrochemical, demands a lot of energy. So that's why, a lot of them are actually shuttering the business. And even the normal retailers, the mom and pop store, they cannot survive when energy cost is easily 4 to 6 times higher than a year before. So that's why we will continue to see strikes, protests, demonstrations, and riots break out across Europe, causing widespread stoppage in public works and rapid deterioration of living standards in the continent. And this, in fact, the Czech Republic's demonstration in September gathered so much attention and so much participation that they are planning another one in October. That's according to those people who participated in the demonstration in September. So we could see a return to poverty in Europe and also see massive capital flight from the continent. Hunger and cold would befall on EU citizens. Now, already capital flight is already happening. Okay, part of the reason is why the Fed want to maintain a high interest rate is that to move capital out from Europe into the US. And the other thing is that just recently, UK has fallen 1 rank below India in terms of GDP. So that goes to show that Europe can actually deteriorate very fast. Okay. And what are the financial implications? Now, looking at the US, according to the IMF, to control inflation, central banks need to hike 1% above the inflation rate. Governments should also end deficit spending and implement austerity measures. Now, that was the standard that the IMF set for every other country, except the countries in the EU and the US. You look at the US total debt is 92.9 trillion as of a few days ago, or 374.6% of GDP. Total US debt plus unfunded liabilities amount to 264.7 trillion, or 1,067% of GDP. US deficit spending amounts to 1.2 trillion this year, and it has never had a surplus for decades. The last time it had a surplus was in 1976, if I'm not wrong, and the deficit needs to be financed, which means more debt, because essentially unfunded liabilities include Social Security, Medicaid, and others. Okay, now imagine, Social Security is zero. Whatever money they need to pay to the people who claim Social Security every month have to be raised through debt. And that is why the US debt keep on mounting. Now, if let's say US were to hike, okay, above inflation rate, it would have to, 9%, let's say 9% of US government debt. Right now, US government debt is 31 trillion. Let's put it 30 trillion. 9% means 2.7 trillion, which is already more than 50% of its total tax receipts. So that's why the Federal Reserve cannot continue to hike. Okay, it is now hiking with the hope that it can bring inflation under control, but I don't think it can. Okay. So if let's say the Fed is really sincere in fighting inflation, it could have raised interest rate above the inflation rate immediately, like what Paul Volcker did. Paul Volcker can actually increase the interest rate 2%, 1%, just to continue hiking above inflation, but the Fed is not. The Fed is adopting a very look-see kind of attitude, okay? Very timid approach, because if they hike above inflation, the entire US economy is destroyed. So they try a little bit, let's see, try a bit more, let's see. So that's why I call a look-see strategy, okay? Now, total QT since 1st of June amounted to 98 billion, far below its targeted 237 billion by the end of September. So the Fed's hands are tight. That's why, despite whatever people say, the Fed will do, Powell will do a Volcker type of thing, But what Volcker did in 1980 was US debt then was just, I think, 30% of GDP. Right now, US debt to GDP is 125%. So how can he ever achieve it? I doubt so. So that's why I believe that when total economic conditions start to worsen in the coming months, the Fed will pause and then they will start to cut. Because nowhere can the Fed allow the conditions to deteriorate further, because what will happen then? The people would rise up against the government. Okay, and already US is not a very cohesive society. And the other thing, I believe that, we also have to be aware what happened in the US after the midterms. Now, if you watch the language of the Biden admin recently, they are condemning the Republicans as a base for extremists. Certain parties are urging they should change the constitution so that Trump cannot run, okay, in 2024. So you can see that there's a lot of dissonance in the society, okay, from the woke, from the woke culture to the cancel culture, okay, and to a fight between the right and the left. So that's why I think a lot of things can happen within the US that is due to its own people internally fighting, and doesn't need someone from some country externally to really pose a threat, because suddenly everyone will fight among themselves. And that is why historians are very worried in the US that they could see a civil war 2.0 in the US. Now let's look at the financial implications in the US. Now, ever since the US has started raising rates, okay, this is the high yield bond, okay, market. You can see that this was during the COVID period, and right now it's deteriorating quite fast. And in the IG bond means investment grade. High yield bond means junk bonds, okay, which means they are so risky that they are rated below, if I'm not wrong, BBB, okay. And high grade IG bonds, they've actually fallen below the COVID period. And out of the IG bonds, investment grade bonds, more than 50% are actually below the BBB level, which means they are very, very risky even in themselves. Okay, in that sense. Okay, so US corporate default could unravel the US economy and lead to mass layoff. So one of the key things, if you want to watch the US economy, is to track the US high yield bond. There is a US high yield bond ETF as well as US IG bond ETF. Just look at the price, okay? And like yesterday, there was a sudden spike, so most probably they have moved up from this level, but then further rate hikes will actually push them back down again. So if, let's say, okay, they continue to go down further, then the Fed will be very, very anxious, because if the borrowing cost becomes too high for corporations to bear, the only recourse is to lay off people en masse. Now, Goldman Sachs recently announced that they have targeted a group of a number of people to be laid off. Okay, and if the banks are such big banks like Goldman Sachs are announcing layoffs, that is already a red sign. Okay, that US economy is deteriorating at a fast pace, because there's no money to be made even for the banks, okay, unless they lay off people to save costs. So this is also another indicator that financially things do not look too well for the US economy. Now, the other thing I want to look at Japan, okay, current Japan government debt amounts to 15.2 trillion or 288% of GDP. Now, if you think that US is bad at 125%, Japan is 288%. This is just public debt, okay, government debt. If we want to count the entire debt, total debt of Japan, it could easily amount to 500% of GDP. And that is why the BOJ never dared to increase interest rate. So it has to keep on buying bonds, but the more bonds it bought, the devaluation of the yen keeps on escalating. So it tried to intervene on the market in 22nd September, but failed to stem the tide of the US dollar rise. So Japan's inflation rate is 3%, while its bond yield is 0.25%. So that means Japan's inflation rate is 10 times its bond yield. Now, the imbalance is the reason for the yen's depreciation in value and mounting trade deficit. Japan's trade deficit reached a new record high in August at 2.1 trillion yen, or the equivalent of a 331% year-on-year. So that means Japanese economy is being slowly punished by the BOJ's inability to act. And as the trade deficit goes higher, the yen will actually devalue faster. And if, let's say, the yen is devaluing faster, the BOJ is not going to raise interest rate to defend the yen, then the yen would just continue to devalue. So even if they really do intervention, okay, what they can do is sell the US bonds, okay, get the US dollar, and then buy the yen. But how can they fight against market forces when suddenly all the sharks are actually circling Japan? So with such a high public debt, the BOJ cannot afford to raise interest rate, which means the yen will continue to devalue versus the US dollar. The trade deficit too will continue to grow. This will weaken Japan's GDP, leading to a prolonged economic stagflation. Now, previously, Japan has been a period of, since 1989, 30 years of deflation. Okay, for those people who follow Japan's economy back into history, 1989 was when the entire Japan's economy bubble burst. Okay, at that time, the Nikkei was 41,000. Japan's housing was at record high. And after 30 years of deflation, they have not even reached back to the 1989 high. That's how damaging it can be. And right now, Japan is going to enter into hyperinflation because of the devaluation of its currency and because of the fast deteriorating trade, trade conditions. Its GDP will continue to fall. And for those who are still unaware, GDP is equal to investment, okay, plus government spending, plus consumption, and plus or minus trade surplus or deficit. So if your deficit gains, even the government try to boost investment to start consumption. But if the trade deficit has become such an overpowering component, then your GDP would actually not be able to kick off. And that's why, the stagflation will persist. But if, let's say, the BOJ continue to leave it in that manner, okay, you have a hyper stagflation, okay, because you have hyperinflation and very, an economy that is neither here nor there, okay, or it could worsen. So that means that it's going to be very bad for Japan as well. Now, what are the financial implications for Europe? Continued weakness in the euro and pound. EU announced its intention to subsidize the energy costs and allowing member nations to bail out failing energy companies. So on one hand, the Christine Lagarde was saying that we need to do QT, we need to increase interest rate, but at the back, all the governments are so worried of their citizens rising up against the government. They say that, okay, we are going to subsidize. Greece announced that, Greece is one of the highest indebted country in the Eurozone. And Greece announced that they will subsidize more than 90% of the energy costs. Britain, UK actually says that we are going to cap the electricity cost to £2,500 per citizen per year. So that means another form of subsidy, okay? So when countries are subsidizing, okay, what will happen to the euro? That means that the country need to borrow more, okay, to issue more bonds, to create more euro in order to subsidize. And they are also bailing out energy companies. Now, according to the latest report, the European energy companies are in for a margin call equivalent to 1.5 trillion US dollars due to losses in hedging. So that means that 1.5 trillion US dollars will be dispersed among a lot of those countries, and Germany recently nationalized one of the energy companies. So that is why I don't foresee the euro gaining any strength unless the Fed starts to reverse course, and therefore it will bring back stability in the market. So the other thing is US announced tax recently when Liz Truss became the prime minister. She announced that US will have tax cuts plus subsidizing energy costs, and that's why the GDP cratered. So all these government decisions will just make the matter worse. Now, the other thing is that what could shift the Fed's position is that one of the other international banking kind of relationship here, the overnight borrowing costs among banks have actually started to rise again. And this was what happened in 2019 when it triggered the repo crisis, which means suddenly banks do not trust each other to loan each other money. In which case then the Fed actually stepped in and offered US dollar liquidity into the system. Now, this problem is right now coming back. And the thing is that European banks and Japanese banks are the most levered banks among the G6. G6 are actually globally important globally systematically important banks. So if they are the most levered, which means their total liabilities is many times their equity, to the tune of more than 20 times. Okay, so when these banks see a rapid destruction of their assets is actually loans. So that means that their liabilities, the equity would continue to shrink, because total assets minus total liabilities, you have equity. So what happened is that for banks, their assets are loans, okay? And also their investment in other banks' bonds or government bonds. So when the European countries start to unravel because of high energy costs, companies goes into bankruptcy, mom and pop stores goes into bankruptcy because of the high energy costs, then their total assets in terms of loan will actually depreciate. Their investment in government bonds and other corporate bonds will actually depreciate, and therefore their equity would shrink. If let's say they shrink and total liabilities become overwhelming, then one GC problem will lead to another, and suddenly you have the whole channel of banks facing the same thing, like the lemon crisis in 2008. So that is why we are now in a very precarious position in terms of how the global economy outlook will be.
So it matched with the prediction that I have right on the elements of,
So this is based. That's why Evelyn actually does her own prediction, and for me, I just share what is in the news that I've gathered all across different countries to paint the picture. So, and surprisingly, you know, some of the things that we shared actually point to the same thing. Yeah. So what are other financial implications? Energy costs will continue to rise. Power rationing will impose restriction further and causing recession across the continent. Now, imagine if you are an important industry and so the government tells you that, hey, you can only work 8 hours. You cannot work 16 hours or 24 hours. So that means that there's going to be a lot of restriction placed on businesses. And that is why the risk of default from corporations and individuals will become high because energy costs escalate. People cannot afford to pay. Okay. What happens? They lose their business and they also will affect the employment. So there's going to be rapid deindustrialization in Germany. In Europe, I think there's going to be hyperinflation plus depression, leading to a hyperinflationary depression. BOE has restarted QE after financial conditions in UK worsen. So UK will see hyperinflation. Okay, ECB will likely follow suit as economic conditions deteriorate further. So what the BOE does, the ECB would likely follow. I think it will reach a position whereby there will be a G7 emergency meeting among the central banks to temper the rise of the US dollar or joint intervention in the forex market. But I think the Fed is more reluctant to listen because they are also worried about their own financial predicament. But eventually, when the economy doesn't generate the sense, it will force the Fed to act in common sense. Okay. So geopolitical events. Now, Russia have initiated a referenda in 4 provinces in Ukraine, and citizens latest this morning have showed that all 4 in majority have voted to join Russian Federation, so that any attack on these provinces will be seen as an attack on Russia, and Russia will then use all weapons at its disposal. So meanwhile, Russia mobilized 300,000 reservists to provide security for the provinces. And this morning, I heard news that they are amassing a massive mobilization of equipment at the border. I think most likely to retake the area which Ukraine has taken over during the middle of this month. Now, one of the things a lot of people hype about, especially on the mainstream US or Western mainstream media, was saying that, hey, Ukraine has beaten Russia back and retaken about 3,000 to 6,000 square kilometers of land. Now, those areas are actually wooded areas, and they are more susceptible to winter conditions because there's no because it is a wooded area, grassland and such, there's no readily available heating sources. So that's why I think Russia decided to pull back, okay, leaving Ukraine to defend a wooded area without the heating resources. And I think Russia would launch a winter campaign, okay, because its equipment are equipped to do so versus the Western supply equipment, because the Western tanks are not that susceptible to a winter war, okay? So there are also reports that Ukraine may not have sufficient winter supplies for its soldiers. So if a winter war happens, I think it's going to be a massacre on the Ukraine troops, some of which will die from will perish in the cold winter because of insufficient supply. And because of winter, the area will become very muddy. They will be bogged down and become easy targets. So that's why I think we are high potential to see a winter campaign. So of course, Nord Stream 1 and 2 have been sabotaged. Okay, both pipelines were severely damaged. Point of no return for Europe. It has now to rely on expensive LNG shipments from the US and Middle East. So this kind of shift, okay, of power play will inevitably affect most of us, the smaller countries that relies on trade, and it will I think we will continue to see this kind of effect, causing a cascading event, okay, to smaller trading countries like ours, and it will affect our market. It will also affect our financial condition, because if US dollar continue to move up, then our ringgit will likely continue to depreciate. And part of the concern I have in Malaysia is that our inflation rate is actually higher than our base lending rate as issued by the bank. Bank Negara is right now, I think, at 2.75. And if, let's say, it continue to hover below our inflation rate, then the ringgit risks being falling further in value against the US dollar. And if we were to measure since the start of this year, I think at that time the ringgit is hovering around 4.05 to 4.1, and right now today is already more than 2.63 to 4.63 to 4.65. So this is quite it will put pressure on our livelihood. Okay, so one of the important things is that try not to incur more debt, because it's going to be, it will continue to be a burden, okay, as economic conditions fall out of favor, okay, from even from investors, foreign investors and such, because if, let's say, we rely heavily on foreign investment from Europe and in US, and if, let's say, their economic conditions continue to deteriorate, okay, they will look after their own interests first before actually looking at having more money to actually invest in the region. So this is something that we need to be aware of. Okay, so the other geopolitical events are most recently is that Iran joins the SCO. The nuclear negotiation is unlikely to reach an agreement and will likely see its airspace violated by Israel and US joint missions. Now, already you see that there's demonstration in Iran as soon as the Iran joins the SCO. So part of the SCO underlying commitment is that they should support each other economically, financially, and to a certain extent militarily. So that's why you see the demonstration immediately ignites in Iran. So if you want to have more insight, I will urge you to follow through Brian's Beverly, his YouTube channel called The New Atlas, where actually he showed proof that one of the leader of the demonstration in Iran have taken a photo with Mike Pompeo who was then the CIA boss, previous CIA boss, and then the foreign secretary, okay, of Trump's administration. So if you want to know a bit more of geopolitics, he can give you a lot of evidence how the NED is destabilizing the regions around China and Russia to prevent countries from uniting, and working together. So do follow his channel if, let's say, you have the time. Now, the other thing is that the National People's Congress in October could lend more insight on China's plans in the next 5 years. Some type of...
I would think that we should practice in caution. A lot of news in the West might not be true. I also seen a lot of news in YouTube channels saying that China has accumulated so much debts, and they are trying to sort of putting China in a very bad light, which might not be true. So I think what we have done here, the research is more impartial, and it could also reflect a more real situation. So be careful of what you've seen in the media as well.
Yeah, especially in the New Atlas, they have actually come up with a lot of examples. Yeah, like in during the China property market burst in August and September, everyone, YouTubers, okay, that are being paid by the US government to smear China. They were saying that China will collapse in 20 days.
Yes.
Some would say in 30 days. Then
Yeah.
someone want to outdo each other. They say China will collapse in 10 days. Okay. So actually the US have a 300 million budget, okay, to smear China. Okay. And this was disclosed in the Biden's admin's budget. So imagine those people who say China is going to collapse and all those, they went into their YouTube, channel. One of them actually teach people how to cook. Okay, so they just, as long as they are paid to slander, okay, they will actually slander. So that's why there are a lot of things, because it has become an ideology war, okay, and because of China's success or Russia's success, or even they are very, very, that some, if Iran, despite all the sanctions from the US, has survived for 20 over years, okay, has shown that the US way of doing things doesn't work. And that's why they will continue to fight, okay? And that is why, Iran has shown to the world that we were the most sanctioned country before Russia, and yet we have survived. So all this, that's why there's a lot of propaganda to launch, because it is showing the failure of such system. And that is the reason why there's a lot of propaganda war. And China also have its own propaganda event. Also, not to say that China doesn't have its own propaganda. And that's why we need to study what is the trend, okay, that will lead to us making certain investment judgment. So, like China says is COVID lockdown and all those, but I think that it's more like China want to prevent the economy from creating inflationary pressure. Okay, so that is my opinion. And we could also see increased tension between North and South Korea after the North tested a ballistic missile. And right now, this morning, South Korea spy agency have reported that they have information that the North Korea would soon be testing a nuclear device. So this is North Korea is actually a proxy for China also. Whenever there's it's just like there were some negotiations between North and South Korea. Negotiation between South Korea and China. China voiced their worry about the South Korea the THAAD nuclear system, THAAD, and South Korea were insistent that they're going to keep that and increase its batteries. So that's why soon after you see North Korea, testing ballistic missile right now going to. So these are all geopolitical pressure that's being applied, and that's why each move seems to move us closer to the brink in terms of a potential war. So, and right now, US may attempt to break Armenia from the SCO. Azerbaijan and Armenia are part of the SCO. So recently, a war broke out at the border. And after Nancy Pelosi visited Armenia, right now, US is urging Armenia to detach itself from the SCO. And why they want to do that? Because Armenia is next to Russian border. They have lost Afghanistan. They want to create another one. So eventually, there will be a lot of proxy acting under the US to make the entire area very, very insecure. So NATO through Kosovo launched military strikes in Serbia, a staunch Russia ally, and this could happen because already there's going to be tension. There's already existing tension between Kosovo and Serbia. And Serbia used to be Yugoslavia before it was being broken down into Croatia, Bosnia, and such. Okay, so there's also trouble brewing between Turkey and Greece, and in the coming month, probably we see more insights into the MWS. Now, MWS I've touched upon last month, where is the Moscow World Standard, which is touting to be replacing the LBMA as a center for physical gold trade, okay, precious metal trade. and EAEU, which is the East Asia European Union, and BRICS reserve currency will be reviewed. So I think they are moving very fast into this because a lot of the countries within the BRICS, they want to insulate themselves from the potential currency crisis emerging from a number of the reserve currency within the IMF basket, which is the euro, yen, and pound. Okay, the other one is actually US dollar. So they want to insulate themselves from this kind of volatility, which is why I think they'll be working more progressively towards the establishment of a BRICS, of a EAEU currency that is based on commodities, tested it first before applying it to the BRICS, because EAEU is still within the umbrella of Russia and the Central Asian countries. But I think that eventually it will spill over into the BRICS. Now, most recent news is that Russia and China have agreed that starting from 2023, they will start to do trade with each other using their own CBDC. CBDC is actually the central bank digital currency. Now, that means that whatever trade that is done through Russia or China CBDC would be beyond the eyes of the of the Five Eyes nation that spy on China, Russia, and all this. So I think the CBDC would eventually be backed by commodities to give it strength and get member countries to participate. Yeah. So Eileen, back to you.
Yeah, okay. Let me just maybe BC, you can stop sharing first.
Okay.
Thank you, BC, for your detailed sharing. What we have shared here is not to scare any one of us here. In fact, from this type of situation, as I said, in a chaotic situation, there's always a lot of opportunity. If you can see those opportunity, potentially, some of the people that can see the opportunity very well, it will also add another zero into your account. Wouldn't you love that? Because if you know how to, if you follow the truth, and the truth will reveal itself in times to come, rather than to listen to some of the propagandas that could not be true and leading you to a wrong decision. Okay? So most important thing is that we have a YouTube channel, both BC and I, and BC has a lot of video on geopolitical situation, which although I know a lot about Chinese astrology and the signals, and also where does it points to the energy, I also subscribe to BC's channel and BC's work in order for me to make a better investment decision, because one cannot do without the other, to ensure that both are correlated and they are to the best accuracy in forecasting. Of course, I will not say that our forecast will be 100% accurate. I think nobody can sort of guarantee that, but at least to more than 80%. Don't you think it's good enough, guys? I have put in the link. I also have a free reading on your birth chart. Actually, our birth chart can reveal a lot of information on ourselves, even from the wealth aspect. Wealth is actually an energy. Money, currency, that's what they're called currency. They are all energies. So whenever we are doing something that is aligned to our birth chart, or something that is aligned to our elements in the birth chart, we will fare better. This is why sometimes when people say that certain investment, like for example, the last 20 years, property investment is the best, but somehow other we still find people that lost money. Not 100% of the people that goes in really makes money, right? It could be that, maybe property investment is not it's not the right investment for them. Or cryptocurrency. Some people, they can just see the opportunity better. They went in when, the curve is very low, when they are, when they are here. Let's say They are here, not here. But some people, somehow or other, they just miss it and they went in here and then it drops again. So this is something that is quite important that you all should look into it here since you attended this talk. So I have put in a link in my chat, in this chat as well, to get this reading for free, which give you a very simple reading on your charts. This free reading actually comes with 3-page report. One is the cover page here, the cover page, and then here page 2 is about you, your chart, and also the page 3, I will do an interpretation of your wealth approach based on your birth chart. Okay, what are your base energy here? Every one of us have the 5 elements base energy, the dominance energy, and also, you know, what you should do in order to generate wealth, your investment approach, whether it's towards trading or towards long-term investment, and also the opportunity elements that you have. Some are earth related, some could be other opportunities element. If you are interested, follow the chats, or I will put in here again, and then you can, you know, you can enroll in this free reading. Okay.
I have to say something. What Evelyn and I are doing via this channel is actually free, so it would actually help us if you try, you know, once we post this on our YouTube channel, you share it with friends or give us a like or subscribe, so that we can continue to build our channel to create more awareness. So do help us grow our channel. Thank you.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. And we are giving you information that is as impartial and as true as possible through a lot of research. Both research on astrology, decoding takes a lot of time. And I'm sure research on the geopolitical, the economic, the financial market also takes a lot of time, you know, to review through so many noise, to screen out so many noise to get the real signal. So I really hope, we really hope, what we ask for is just an exchange of energy, of subscribing to our channel, and also to like our video, to give us encouragement for us to continue this event. Thank you. So in summary, we will look at what the chart or the astrology energy chart tells us. It will be from inflation to stagflation, and in fact October will be the kickstart of stagflation, and it's going to stay there for quite some time. Okay, then unrest, the war is getting more severe, and climate change is expected, and you will also expect a very severe winter as well, because I see all the cold elements in the coming months. Okay, over to you, BC. I think you want to switch on. I think no need to switch already. Yeah.
No need. Yeah. So just to recap, US, I think stagflation will be a primary concern. Japan will be hyperinflation. But actually it will be a so-called a massive stagflation, because I don't see Japan's economy taking off. But hyperinflation will take precedence, and then it becomes a hyper stagflation. Okay, EU and UK will see hyperinflationary depression, because there'll be a lot of people who will be unemployed as the industrialization takes place. Now, war on several fronts in Europe. I think the most obvious one would be the intensity of the Russia-Ukraine war would actually increase with a harsh winter campaign in Ukraine. Potentially, there'll be war breaking out between Armenia and Azerbaijan, and also between Kosovo and Serbia. I don't think there is any military conflict going to happen across the Taiwan Strait, simply because China would want to prolong the whole military conflict things for as long as usual, for as long as it's warranted. And I believe that China would want to avoid war, and it will, if worst case comes to worst, it will just do an embargo. okay, to shut Taiwan off completely. That could be one of the things that it will do first before putting troops on the ground. Now, the US has always anticipated that China would actually put its troops on the ground in Taiwan. I think they will not do so because of the immense human life that will involve in crossing the 100 kilometer stretch, or 100, I think it was 100 miles, so it will be a 160 kilometer stretch across the straits. That will cause a lot of loss of lives. Potentially, I think China would want to cripple Taiwan economically and financially. And if, let's say, there's any conflict, most probably China would attack Taiwan's military installation, not bombing the entire country, but specific installation while having an embargo. So that would keep foreign forces out and prolong the seizure of Taiwan until its surrender. I doubt they are going to put, like they anticipate, a few 100,000 troops onto the island and such. But let's see. Okay, although I have my doubt at this moment, there will not be any military conflict across the strait. And meanwhile, hunger and cold in Europe, power outage in the US. Now, what happened last year during the severe cold was even Texas, have a breakdown in power supply for, I think, between 24 to 48 hours. And California could be one of those states that will be deeply impacted as well. And Japan in rush to restart idle nuclear plants. So Japan have earmarked about 17 nuclear plants to restart by the end of February next year. So definitely it's going to create a stress on the global uranium supply. And I think the uranium, looking at the market, there's going to be a lot of volatility. The stock market will be making some rebound, but eventually it will have what we see will likely be a stock market rally. A bear market rally, but certain sectors like the energy sector could see a revival come winter, and it will continue until next year. Because currently what the US is doing to suppress the price of oil is through the sale of its the US call it what already? The petroleum reserve, okay, strategic petroleum reserve, SPR. So they are releasing 1 million barrels of oil per day, and this will stop in October. And this is done in line to keep oil prices from rising, keep inflation down, so that it will benefit the Democrats in the midterms. But I think there's going to be likely to be a Republican sweep. And if, let's say, it's going to be a Republican sweep, then I think the Democrats would start create problems. Okay, there'll be riots, demonstrations, and such. And this could actually be something that is bad for the entire US economy overall. And once this release of the SPR, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, has ended, then we will see oil price gaining ground. And Russia is already in discussion with OPEC that, in view of the potential recession and slowdown, to remove 1 million barrels of oil per day. Now, currently, the price of oil is being pushed down because of release of 1 million barrels of oil per day into the market. Now, imagine when this 1 million barrels of oil per day is no longer there, but on top of that, we will see a removal of another 1 million barrels of oil per day from the global market, because OPEC and Russia wants to keep the price of oil elevated to defeat the intention of the West to put a cap on the price of oil. And if, let's say, you're OPEC, you do not want to have a cap in the price of oil, why should you want to have $40 per barrel of oil when you can have 100? So that I think such a move will actually be fully defeated because India and China is actually taking in Russian oil, and they are enjoying discount, and that's why China can actually reduce the price of gasoline and diesel. And I think come the price cap, now JP Morgan has already warned, if they implement a price cap on Russian oil, and Russia decided that I'm not going to export any oil into Europe, okay, I must as well, since I'm not exporting the amount of oil to Europe, and I can make back my money by raising the price of oil, what if I remove 3 million barrels of oil from the market? Because that is about the kind of amount of oil that Russia supplies to Europe. So removal of 3 million barrels of oil from the market will, according to JP Morgan, will cause oil price to spike to $190 per barrel. And at $190 per barrel, it will cause massive inflation because oil is consumed as energy in everything that we do. And if Russia wants to play dirty, it can remove 5 million barrels of oil from the market. And according to JP Morgan, if Russia removes 5 million barrels of oil from the market, it will spike oil to $380 per barrel. And if let's say that happens, okay, the entire, global economy will actually just stop because no one have the money to even start manufacturing and such, except for friendly countries to Russia, okay, because they will still enjoy either a fixed price or a discount. So that's why the price cap will not work. And I think that the US may be in for something that they have never bargained for. And just like they say they wanted to collapse the Russia economy, Europe economy now is fast deteriorating versus Russia. Russia right now is recovering. And if you think that the strength in the US dollar, is indication that the currency is the best performing currency, well, the ruble is the best performing currency so far this year. In fact, before the Ukraine war, the Russian US dollar trade is hovering at about between 77 to about 84 rubles per US dollar. Right now, it's about 56 to 58 rubles per US dollar, which means even the Russian ruble has appreciated against the US dollar. And why is that? Because this is showing that Russia is willing to indirectly back its ruble by oil, because it says that any oil that is bought from Russia will be traded in ruble with the West. Okay, so it's like a de facto backing of oil, of the ruble by oil. And Russia, when it launched its gold or precious metal in the Moscow World Standard, then you will see that the ruble will be backed by precious metals as well. And Russia is the world #2 producer of gold, and also the world #2 producer of platinum, palladium, and such other types of precious metal. And also, I believe it's the could be the top 10 producer of silver. So that's why Russia is unfazed, okay? And they will continue to implement all this to put pressure on the West. Now, part of all this, I believe, is that it is to put enough damage so that the US will suffer economic and financial destruction in order to avoid an all-out war, because it can no longer finance its military. So that is what I think the strategy in play is over the next few years. So that's all I have. Any questions from the?
Okay, BC, we have quite a number of questions from the floor.
Yeah. Okay.
So let me just go through the chat. From EM Loy, may I know what are the tickers to track the bond market?
Yeah, I think there are a number I just given that is best. If you want to have a clearer picture, you go to ETF DB which is a ETF database here, etfdb.com. So in the search, you can actually put in a US IG bond or US high yield bond. Then you'll see a lot of the ETFs that actually track those specific bonds, and you will then have a clear picture that whether is it specific bonds or is it the entire ETFs that actually see that kind of substantial decline. That will give you a clearer picture. I can't recall what the ETF at the click of my fingers, so I can't answer you directly, and therefore it's best that you go to etfdb.com to check whether the entire bond structure face the similar situation. Yeah.
Okay, another one from David Hong is, with the sell down in all assets class from stock, community, and even bond and dollar flowing back to US, where are the money parked currently? And then this is question number 1. So maybe you might want to answer this first before we go to question number 2.
Yeah, I think the market right now is seeing funds removed. Most of them are staying on the cash side. But if you listen to those people, those big investment hedge funds here, like Ray Dalio's Bridgewater, and recently you have from Paulson, okay, who actually made a lot of money during the last global financial crisis. They are telling people to go into precious metals, especially gold, as not so much as an investment destination to see appreciation, but as a wealth protection. So you can see that how gold has fared, gold has fared, okay, in up to this year, like in EU, in Euro, in Japanese yen, and in British pound, gold have done very well because of the depreciation of their currency against the US dollar. Whereas in US dollar, gold actually has fallen as much as 20%, but it's still better than the Nasdaq or the S&P, which has fallen by more than 25 and 30+% respectively. So in that sense, I think gold is a choice for wealth protection. And in terms of the most hated sector is actually the mining sector, because the mining stocks have actually been battered terribly over the last 6 months. And part of this is because why the gold mining companies have performed badly is because the people relate their performance to the US dollar price in gold. And because of that, you can see that the bullion banks, in action with the Federal Reserve, they are trying to suppress the price of gold through their futures trading to keep the price of gold low, and then the banks would short the stock market of the ETFs, gold mining ETFs, to keep the price low, so that when everything is so bearish, then people would have no confidence in gold, and therefore they do not want to invest in the gold miners. But one thing is interesting is that ever since the start of this recent ever since the start of the Russian war with Ukraine, the eastern side of the banks, okay, like Turkey, Thailand, Singapore, China, India, have been buying gold at a feverish pace. And even though gold right now has fallen, okay, quite drastically, in India they are offering, if I'm not wrong, a 15% premium, which means if let's say gold is at 1,600 plus, they are paying another almost $200 more to secure gold, because India is not, doesn't have gold mines. China is the world #1 gold producer. China is offering a premium of $43 above the spot price of gold. So they are actually draining the gold from the Western banks. And that is why for the common people, they are draining the silver from the COMEX from the LBMA as well, because a lot of the rich family officers and rich individuals who park their money at the COMEX vault or at the LBMA vault, they are now requesting physical transfer out of their gold and silver from out of the LBMA and COMEX, and that's why you see a sharp fall in the available stock of gold and silver in both the COMEX and LBMA. So if you want to ask yourself, why are they doing this? Because all of these rich investors, rich family officers, you call them the elites, and central banks, they know that the game is almost up. And that's why they want to remove everything from the banks, because Western banks have a built-in structure, which means that if, let's say, they start to collapse, they will have to seize the assets of the depositors to pay for the bank's bailout. Okay, so they call it a bail-in, because government is not going to do so. So that's why they are very worried that they might not be able to secure their assets. So, you know, in tandem, everyone is withdrawing their gold, silver, precious metals stored in the Western bank vaults into private vaults. So this is an indication where the smart money is going. Okay, and I think that as much as when a lot of countries, for example, when the BRICS currency comes into being, then we would see that no one wants to use US dollar in inter-country trade because they'll be using local currencies. Some of them will be using CBDCs, and that means that the US dollar have to go somewhere. And yes, you are right, the dollar will flow back to US. So when you have a lot of dollars in the US, you know, what will it happen? You know, it will cause hyperinflation, because there are so many US dollars in the US right now and nobody wants them. Therefore, the only thing that will happen is that the price of goods will have to go up, and that would cause hyperinflation in the US. And that's why a financial war and economic war is being waged right now. On the Western side, they want to suppress the price of commodities to prevent, you know, the BRICS nation, okay, from getting the amount of surpluses from their trade, from the commodities trade, so that they can suppress them. And on the east side, they try to do away with the dollar so that the US dollar flow back to the US, and therefore, you know, causing destruction to the US economy. So it has become this kind of a war between the US, the Europe against the BRICS nation and the SCO nations. Yeah.
It's like tug of war, right? And I
Yes,
think
yes.
gold investment is more of patience, and I would believe that it's more for wealth hedging rather than for, you know, for the investment for profit kind of thing. That strategy. So
Yeah.
question 2, what is Euros benefiting from joining US in the war with Russia when only Euro and even UK is on the disadvantaged position?
Yeah, this is a question that even their citizens accuse their government of being sellouts. Now, a deeper study on the people right now running the EU, and some of the people that are running the governments within the EU, they are students of the World Economic Forum, okay, the WEF. Now, the WEF is an organization of the elite, and if you follow what its president or CEO says, Klaus Schwab, you know, he says that, you know, we need to create a utopia world where you own nothing and still be happy. Okay, so that is the utopia, that the World Economic Forum, and it is from there that they implement the ESG economy. So the ESG economy has caused nothing but destruction to a lot of countries. They are the ones that come up with the carbon limitation and all those. And recently, a group of scientists in across the world have protested against the ESG, because they say that how can the world be without carbon dioxide? if you reduce the amount of carbon dioxide, you will never get the oxygen. Okay, because photosynthesis require carbon dioxide. Okay, that's why the ESG economy is such that, you know, Europe, everything will look clean, electrified infrastructure and such. But do you know that mining lithium is very hazardous to the environment? All the windmills, for the wind power that is being consumed, okay, their blades are never recycled. They are planted back into the ground. And that's why if you go to you just Google wind blades graveyard, then you will see that, you know, all the blades are buried into the ground. They are never recycled. So how green is that? You know, so all the remote areas where mineral resources are mined, they require fossil fuel because it's the cheapest and it's more easily available. So that's why, you know, when they implement this policy, it's like the entire Europe looks clean, okay, but it's okay when everywhere else is dirty, okay? Just like, you know, they ban Greenland from actually extracting their rare earth, because rare earth, they say, is very hazardous to the environment. But it's okay in order to have the ESG economy, the magnets to power the windmills, okay, the magnets that are required to power the entire electrified infrastructure. It's okay if other countries mine them, okay? So that is why the ESG economy is very one-sided. And because of that, ESG economy is going to destroy Europe. Just as recently, they limit the number of cattle that Netherlands farmers could have, because they say that cattle fat actually create methane that creates global warming. And they've restricted the farmers from using fertilizer, because they say that it's being, you know, all this nitrogen will actually damage the environment. Now, to go a step further, you know, the recent Sri Lanka bankruptcy of the government. Now, a lot of people like to accuse that it's due to debt trap. Just to share with you, according to an independent analysis, I can't recall, but if you go to my Facebook, you scroll it down. My Facebook is PC Wong Author. You scroll down, you'll be able to.
I have put in the link up there, the Facebook link. Let me put it again.
So I have actually put in an article. Otherwise, I will repost it again in my Facebook later. That shows that China's debt that Sri Lanka owns is only 11%. Japan is 11%. India is 5%. 70% is from IMF, BlackRock, and all the investors. And do you know that why Sri Lanka doesn't have enough food? Because part of the condition in borrowing from the Western nation is that you must meet ESG guideline. Less use of fertilizer, more on organic. So, but then the Sri Lankan economy, how can they sustain organic food? Because their people do not have the means or do not have the resources to buy at a higher price. So that's why when they try to meet that borrowing conditions to have ESG, that's why the Sri Lankan economy suddenly have shortage of food. And of course, the government is very corrupted, okay? It's like everyone in the entire government is interrelated on a relative basis, okay? Someone is actually someone's relative, and that is why it caused the financial condition to worsen because of corruption. But on top of that, the food insecurity was caused by the demands, you know, that ESG companies that place on that. And one of the so-called major proponents of ESG is actually BlackRock. And BlackRock actually owns a lot of the debt that they used to finance Sri Lanka. So you can see, you know, how all this is intertwined. And these are the conditions that are placed, okay, by the Western borrowers on Sri Lanka. So, you know, it's easy to say it's debt trap, okay, because you can say that if you're not going to pay, we are going to seize your asset. Now, just imagine if you're not going to pay a bank, will the bank seize your asset? You know, every borrowing clause is the same. But the thing is that the seizure of the port is not a seizure, it's an agreement between Sri Lanka government and the Chinese lender to state that we will lease this port to you for 99 years, but there are certain KPIs that you must deliver. Failure of which we would cease the operation of the port back from the Chinese. So people look at the headline and then jump into all sorts of conclusion, and you should read the kind of detailed analysis that comes up from independent parties so that you understand what is the true nature is. So that's why the debt trap is something that is hyped all over the Western mainstream media, just to create a smear on China, because China is a competing economy. No one believed that China could actually catch up so fast with the US. You know, from being China in 1980 is below India in terms of economy. Right now, you know, it's 3 times India's economy. So no one actually believed that could happen. And that is why the reason that we have this, okay? So sorry if I'm a bit long, but I want to spell out more things of why the ESG, you know, has created so much more burden to EU farmers and such. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it could be, you know, some kind of an idea that does not work. For example, in windmills also they use a lot of lithium battery in order to store the battery. Even solar power also use battery, and battery is actually not very environmental friendly. Although, you know, I have a lot of courses on lithium battery, how to manufacture lithium battery. So yeah, and they paint that lithium battery EV is actually environmental friendly, which is not the truth. So
Yeah.
another one is do you okay, from EM Lloyd, do you predict that oil will jump all the way to 190 post-October?
I think it won't jump so fast, but definitely I think once the SPR stop releasing its oil into the global market, we will see oil trending up. Probably, according to a lot of the investment banks, from Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, it will move above $100 per barrel. And what happened next depends on how, because Russia right now and OPEC are working to remove 1 million barrels of oil. If let's say they agree to that, then that will cause another spike up, probably, you know, $10 to $20 more after it has gone above 100. Some of them put the price around 120 to 130. Now the spike to 190 to even more than, you know, 200 depends on Russia action when the price cap is implemented in February. So if let's say they implement it and Russia decided to pull 3 million, that will be 190. But what if Russia pull another 1 million? Then most likely we'll see, you know, for every 1 million that is out of the market, it will likely create another $20 kind of increase to $25 increase. But to go beyond, you know, beyond that, then we will see further escalation, because that's just not going to be enough oil to supply to the entire economy. So that's my answer to you.
Okay, so we have one more questions from, let me see, hold on, let me just pick yeah, from David Hong, that, you know, is National Endowment for Demo behind World WEF, World Economic Forum,
I think
ESG agenda?
Yeah, I think the World Economic Forum definitely have is supporting the ESG, but the National Endowment for Democracy is run by the CIA, so it's another division, which is their job is to solve this, you know, to solve instability around the countries that, you know, in the countries that surround Russia and China, to destabilize them, to create a situation whereby it's very difficult for the countries to like Russia and China to grow outside of it, because it creates sort of a barrier. So it's two different type of groups. Yeah.
Okay. So I think if there's no any further questions, we can call it a day, BC.
And thank you everyone for attending. You can actually have a recap of what we say. I think over next week when we have the YouTube channel posted, then you can actually recap what Evelyn have shared as well as I. And if you see our YouTube, please like or share, to help draw interest in the subject matter. Yep.
Yeah, that's right. And you will also help to, sort of spread the truth, at least, signals that we have screened from the noises that is more, accurately reflect what is really going on. Okay?
Okay, thank you and bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.